Welcome to All Creation Podcast, everybody. I am Neddy Astudillo. I am a Presbyterian pastor in the United States and coordinator of the Climate Justice and Faith online Spanish program for the Pacific Theological Seminary. And I'm also here with you, serving as the editor of the Winter 2024 collection of articles and podcasts for allcreation.org. During this season of All Creation, we are hearing from the voices of Muslim and spiritual women and leaders from around the world working for environmental and climate justice. And today I have the pleasure to share this space with Nana Firman, a colleague, a friend, who is joining us from Dubai as she attends COP28. And as some of you know, COP28 is taking place in a Muslim country. So it is good to hear voices of faith like Nana, who is the founder of Eco-Fab Living and initiator of the Muslim eco-hijra movement. She's an ambassador for Green Faith and an alumni in the Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Nana is from Indonesia and lives in California, United States. So I'm very excited to welcome our special guest today. But before I have a chance to give her a chance to share with us her story, a very unique story, which connects her to her mother country, to the forest, to her faith, and even to a tsunami, which caused great damage to the island where she's from. I want to share with you, Nana, that I recently had the chance to be in Indonesia to feel and witness some of the struggles, but also the beauty and the resilience of your people. So what you have to share with us today really touching my heart. And after this trip in particular, which was a consultation organized by the World Community of Reformed Churches on economy, ecology, and faith, I then had a chance to go to Sri Lanka for another consultation on the role of spirituality for resilience in the midst of climate change and the loss of biodiversity. All of this just to say, too, that I was struck by the words of Reverend Sushithar, who leads the National Council of Churches in Sri Lanka. He said that the tsunami of 2004 made him recognize the difference between how humans act and how nature acts, or the ocean. In the destructive force of the tsunami, he recognized the earth needs to respond first to discomfort, the earthquake, and then the need to comfort herself. She returned to her former normal ways, united with the rest of her natural brothers and sisters. And looking at the way that we human beings act, who we live in society, and for him, especially in Sri Lanka, after many years of civil war, but now also in the midst of climate change as a new challenge, he said that we have to go back to our former ways. We need to settle back to our former position, living peacefully with our neighbors, creatures, nature, to give birth to new life, like they also witnessed in Sri Lanka after the tsunami. Your life has also been impacted by the same tsunami that he was referring to, and you became an activist, worked with the World Wildlife Fund for several years in the reconstruction, the Green Reconstruction efforts in Indonesia after the wake of the tsunami and the earthquake. So we want to hear more of your story. So I'll stop here. Thank you, Nana, very much for being with us today. Welcome.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Neddy. It's very nice to see you again, even though through Zoom. It's my pleasure always to share with you, and also for this opportunity. And yes, I am here in Dubai. It's been 5-6 days now for me in Dubai attending COP28. And it's been another experience being at COP. And I just want to share this, that this is the first COP that we have a faith pavilions. So the first ever faith pavilions at COP. And then, as you know, Neddy and I have been at COP many times in different countries. And we've been struggling to have a faith pavilions, because when we want to share from faith initiatives or faith voices, or even multi-faith like, like actions, we're always struggle, like where are we going to have a space, like, on different, like other people's pavilion, like, or countries or initiatives, or different communities. And we've been saying that we want faith pavilions. And finally, this is the first time. It's not perfect, but it's a start. And I really feel like the difference, because then we have so many events and session in the faith pavilions, that we don't have to go around and trying to find a space for us. But then we have the space now, so we have like thank God we have a lot of like activities in the faith pavilions. So like I really like, like it's a blessing for this, at least, if we're not like accomplishing the whole objectives of this COP, at least we have this as a history to have a faith pavilion. So speaking about faith, as you mentioned about the tsunami at the end of 2004, that happens in the just off the Sumatra Island in Indonesia, in the northern part of Sumatra Island. um that's like, I think, like the largest earthquake, like I think until today. And then, like, followed by a huge tsunami, because it's just the coast of northern Sumatra in Aceh province. But then the impact was felt all the way to East Africa. So you mentioned about Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka, yes, they were affected pretty bad also, because they're not that far, their location from the off the coast of northern Sumatra. So yes, we had the back then we have the collaboration also with southern India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and even to all the way to East Africa, to, like, working on the recovery of tsunami, like including like part of Malaysia and Thailand as well. So after the tsunami, I was being called by WWF in Indonesia, the World Wildlife Fund, to help out on looking at the spatial planning that was going to be done after the tsunami, because everything was destroyed. So World Wildlife Fund was already working before on like over there, like trying to sort of like policy intervention about the nature, like the nature resources management. However, because of the tsunami, everything is just like, like destroyed. So that draft, the policy draft was not, it was invalid, like, so we had to start all over again. What should we do now? Because the recovery of it obviously was in front of our us at that time, and the concern was that's going to be a massive reconstruction to be done. But then how do we resource the, like the building, like materials and so on and so forth. Especially back then, the big like, like need was the timber. So the timber to do the recovery, because so I think about 200,000 houses that needed to be built at that time. And then we were very concerned, like, where do people like get the timber? So there is this thing that was like the talk, because the Aceh was also having like this conflict for a long time. So because of the social conflict, the forest was intact. Nobody like touched the forest. So it's very pristine. But after the tsunami, because the need is high for timber, they said, oh, we can just cut the forest. Now that, we need a lot of timber. And then we said, no, don't cut the forest, because you just had a tsunami from the ocean just now. But if you cut the forest, next year you're going to have the tsunami from the mountain, right? Like, landslide and, and the floods and so on and so forth. So we're trying to, like, part of the green reconstruction is to ensure that, the building material is sourced from the sustainable resources. So then the timber is part of, like, a big part of that, like, how we source the timber to uh to get, like, the sustainable resources. And we asked a lot of the humanitarian aid that was like they came to Aceh to do the reconstruction. We actually helped out on building the guidelines that instead of like bringing money, can they source the timber from a sustainable resources? So we work also with the like, like timber companies, like sustainable timber companies all over the world. So the in kind, like, aid, instead of like bringing the money and purchase the timber in Indonesia, and then they're going to just like trigger the people to cut the forest. So those kind of like a very, like, like a very tough campaign, I think, like, because I wasn't really ready to do that. But then it was like, that was the need on the ground. And also another thing is like to how do we restore the damage in the coastal area, because the coastal area was completely damaged. And one of my program with that was, it's called Green Coast, which is like regreening the coastal area that was damaged. So part of that is like doing replanting with the community. And remember that this community lost everything. They lost all their family members. They lost their homes. They're living in the like tent, the refugee tent, because of that, until, like, waiting for their homes to be rebuilt. But then, like, in the meantime, I have this like coast, like, regreening the coast. So I wanted to like bring this, sustainability with the people, and let's do the planting. But then of course they said no. They said like, why do I have to plant? Like, we lost our families, we need our homes, and then here you are asking us to plant the mangrove at that time. And but I said, this is for, like, like to protect the ecosystem, because the mangrove will protect the people, and like in terms of like the from the ocean. And then um and then they said, no, no, we are not going to do it. And I was very frustrated, because I put all the jargon, like, like sustainability, ecosystem, and so on and so forth. But then in the midst of my frustration, a friend of mine told me, like, why don't you engage from the Islamic tradition, the Islamic teaching? Because the people of Aceh is very devout Muslim, like, the community. And I was like, what? Islam and like environment? I'm not sure, like, what is the relationship and the connection. But then I wanted to be successful in my program. So I said, okay, let me, like, look up in the Holy Quran, the Muslim scriptures, and then also the Sunnah, which is the prophetic tradition from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And then to my surprise, I found so many. And I was like, oh my God, there's like a lot of this, like, gems. So, and then one of the hadiths, which is the saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, about this is he said that even if the hour is near, like the end of the world, like, the doomsday is near, and you have seedling in your hand, you must, finish your planting. You still keep planting. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I went back to the community and I shared that hadith, the saying of the prophet. And to my surprise, the community respond. The one before, they just like say no, like they didn't want to listen to me, and completely like change, like the opposite. And I was like, and they said like, oh, yeah, they're familiar with that, saying. they said, okay, this is like our doomsday. Like, we lost everything. And if the prophet said that, then we must do it. So we had all the seedling already prepared. So immediately the change of, just the response, and then we ended up planting like the whole coast of Aceh. I think 17 districts, in the whole coastal was damaged. So it was a successful effort. And I was like, why didn't we, like, engage like the people from their faith? Obviously it's like something that is near and dear to them, and they're familiar with, and they do it from the heart, rather than, I mean, I was like trying to engage from their head, like, and like saying this is like sustainability and so on and so forth. But I mean, like, eventually I explained about the sustainability, the ecosystem, why we did the planting and so on, and then why we don't want to cut the forests, even though we need the timber, we need to find a different way. Eventually, like, people get it, but the first action is to engage with something that they believe in and they're near and dear. So that's how, and after that, I just feel like, oh, I need to learn more about this, even though I'm a Muslim and I'm familiar with some of the verses and the hadith that I've heard, like those since I was a little, but I didn't put the connection together until that,
Yeah.
incident. Yeah.
That's a beautiful story, Nana. And it's very interesting that even within the Christian faith too, in the last 20 years plus 30 years, there has also been an effort to reconnect with our own faith tradition and understand the treasures and the gems, like you mentioned, from our own faith that can help us figure out how to solve our most crucial environmental issues of the time and the crisis in the planet. I want to make sure and mention that you also wrote an article for All Creation just recently called "Enjoying Good and Forbidding Wrong," and you mentioned there that Islam remains an enormous source of cultural, moral, and political influence in many Muslim majority nations. And we see the importance of religions now, even a COP, as you're mentioning, for the first time, there being a faith pavilion. So that means that the world is recognizing the world of faith traditions really to move us in the right direction, to move us back, I guess, like a tsunami, back into our order, right? A peaceful
Yes, yeah.
with each other and with the natural world. Is there any other also story that you'd like to share of how the Muslim faith and people have been recognizing those treasures or gems that can help us today? Yeah.
Yeah. So I share this story also at one of the session at COP. It's called the Islamic Social Finance for Climate Action. We're trying to look also looking at what is the, like, in the Islamic tradition, especially in the financing and the social movement, what can we get, like, like from the tradition that can help like our climate action and solve this climate crisis. So one of so I was sharing in that session about the concept of wakaf, which is it's one of the Islamic finance instrument. Usually it's referred as an Islamic endowment, and it's like a long Islamic tradition for socio-economic institution, especially like designed for equitable distribution of wealth and fulfillment of societal basic needs. And it's actually influenced the establishment of English trust law back then in the history. So if people are familiar with English trust law, it's a similar to that. So waqf in Arabic means to hold or to stop or to preserve. So when like this waqf attempt is to preserve or to hold a property for a certain use, like good use, cannot be for bad usage, but for good usage, and usually for the benefits of the community or the society. So it's sometimes it's called a charitable trust also, like in other, I think, like I read in some article, it's called charitable trust. And it is like a property or that is used for like a certain purpose. So however, it's something, wakaf is familiar with the Muslim usually understand what is wakaf. However, like the purpose of the wakaf is somehow, it's kind of like a forgotten thing within the Islamic community, except for the purpose is for to build mosque or to build orphanage or to build schools, like Islamic boarding schools. But then beyond that, it's sort of like we forgot about it. But in the history, wakaf was used for different kind of means. For example, if you have like a property that has like a water spring, for example, or like you even want to purchase like a land or a property of others that has the water spring that you want to purchase, and then you want to um sort of like put that as your walk-off. So you purchase and then use that I'm going to put this as a walk-off. That means for the benefits of the community, so everybody can get can take the water resources for free. And then that property cannot be sell in the future. Like, for example, if you have children, they cannot inheritance that, because that's already, you put the stop of the use for any other commercial, but you like dedicated that to like this is your endowment that only God can give you the rewards. So this is like something like a part of the Islamic tradition, but like what I mentioned, somehow like the purpose is only like nowadays that we see is only to build mosques or orphanage or like Islamic boarding schools. So in Aceh, after the tsunami, when we're done with the reconstruction and so on and so forth, nice, everything, then the just regular development came in, right? So again, the threat is to our forests, because in Indonesia the biggest threat is the forest conversions. So the forest conversion, that the big threat besides logging to like just the deforestation, it's also the forest conversion to palm oil plantation. So that's the big threat in Indonesia, because then like from the pristine forest, the the rainforest, it's converted to the monoculture, the single species like plantation, which is destroying like the whole ecosystem as well as the soil itself. So like back then I was like, this is like the end of my time in Aceh. I was in Aceh for 5 years after the tsunami. And the end of my time there was, like when it's already like, everything was already done of the reconstruction and the recovery, and the development was starting to, kind of coming in. Then, the threat is there. And then I was just actually like throwing these words without even knowing, if that's possible or not. I said like, why don't we just put the forest as a walk-up? And then I guess I just like throw that words. I didn't even consult it with the Muslim jurists, because in Islam there's like a jurisprudence that you cannot just like make something and just how you feel. So without even like consulting, I was just throwing that words. But I guess my like stuff at that time in WWF, and like other local NGO in Aceh thought like, hey, that's a good idea. So they run with it and they actually developed that. And probably they also like consulted with some local, like, religious leaders and like Islamic jurists, like, is that possible? And actually it's possible. And there is like, in the tradition. So then they started like, put like, money together. So this is like a very uh grassroots initiative. So it's no big money. It's just like people chip in, and then they started purchasing 1 hectare of the area where the forest is being threatened to be converted to palm oil plantation. So started from 1 hectare. That's like in 2012, I think. And now it's almost 5 hectares. Like thank goodness for that. So it's been like, like it's a very local and grassroots effort. And then this this initiative was heard, by others in Indonesia, and now we have like waka forests in several parts in Indonesia, like, and then they initiated like in the different ways. Like the one in Aceh was like very local, grassroots. Some like work with universities, some with the local, like, like institutions. So I mean, like it's a different models, but then, this is the trigger to see that as the walk-off based forest is part of the solution of, like the threat to our forest, as well as, like as the solution for the climate crisis. And so what happened is like in Aceh, it's very interesting because like there is a big one of the, like, like the pristine animal in Sumatra is the Sumatran tiger, which is like like they're endangered species now. And so that location for the waka based forest in Aceh is not the home range of the tiger. However, after like, this many years, so some of like the activists found the threat of the what is that, the footprints of the tiger. So apparently then they did the research. The female tiger hide their cubs in that waka forest because
Mm,
they feel safe.
mm,
Now
mm.
it's like it's the ecosystem is back. And then also there's like, when I went there with my husband, there's a big bees, like, the like the whole thing
The
in that,
beehive, yeah.
the beehive in the
Yeah.
forest. And we were like, oh my God, it's so
Mm,
huge.
mm,
And also some like, like bird species
mhm,
appear. Now
mm,
it's like this is part of like, also it's being used as the nature schools. And
mm,
then university student can do research and so on and so forth. So like first we just said this is like, we wanted to have this as part of to protect the forest, but now the
mhm,
community and society have the benefit out of them.
mhm. So this is it's beautiful to see that fruit of that work that you did so many years ago, Nana, um, um, and makes me think that there's nothing that could stop uh, uh, wakaf from happening all over the world
Mhm.
where Muslim faith is put into practice, right? In
Yeah,
properties of the Muslim people and non-Muslim. I feel
yeah,
inspired by that. I'm trying to think, what similar principle value do we have within the Christian faith that could also help us protect areas in such a way from exploitation and become shelters for wildlife, and
yes, yeah,
to continue. Um, I would assume that in other countries where Islamic faith is not necessarily the dominant, but if there are people that Muslim that have properties that they can definitely put into practice these principles. And others like me can just follow through and do the same, because it's totally it's the right way to to settle back with nature. Be more like Mother Earth, right? Yeah, that's beautiful. And thanks for sharing with us what is happening in Sumatra right now, and those stories that have to do with our own consumption and lifestyles, and how we are affecting people. Speaking as someone within the United States, no.
And Neddy, if I can add another one, so that so like one of the principles, like like when we started this walk of base forest, is there's another hadith, the saying of the prophet, that related to the planting of trees, which is like in Islam, planting of a tree is considered a charity. So and like, so like when you plant a tree, and then like others have get benefits out of it, it's not necessarily a person, because sometimes when we plant trees, we thought, oh, like we can get the fruits, or like like or other things that like from the trees. But then but we hardly like think that the birds will benefit, the insects, and then other things that will benefit. Then when they benefited, that's our charity to them, and we're the one who get the reward. And then there's this thing in Islam that called the recurring charity, or in Arabic it's called sadaqah jariyah. So because like the prophet said, when a person dies, all his or her acts come to an end by but three things: the recurring charity, the knowledge that is benefiting for other people, and also the pious offsprings, the children that praise for this person. So those are the whatever, like your other things is already come to end, but those three things. So the recurring charity is something big in the Muslim community, that they wanted to have this, that after like it's go beyond like their time on this earth. So even like after you die, you want this recurring charity is still there. And we forget sometimes that this planting tree is part of this recurring charity. And so then in the Waka forest also we did some replanting, like the like to ensure that this, like the trees there. So when I visited with my husband in 2017, we planted a few trees, like the seeds, like and it's already big now, the tree. So it is like something that is part of that also, that people see that from like that perspective as well.
In Indonesia, is it possible to continue buying more and more land to make sure that land is under the Waqf tradition?
Yeah, so that is like so then like from that initiative, now it's already like sort of spread out in other part of Indonesia. It's like we started to see this popping up, the Waqf based forests. And this particular in Aceh in 2020, I think it was acknowledged as a site, historical site also, because that's the first Waqf based forest in Indonesia. So now they also like hold that kind of like like recognition that they are the one who like this site is the first time, like the first one that like kind of like revive this idea again.
Wonderful. Wow, great. Wow, what a journey, Nana, you've had and you continue to have. You're a student at the Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Not much more, I think. Maybe you're to be done soon. And now you're a COP28, one of many other COPs that you've been present. Maybe as a last word, is there anything from COP28 that we need to know, as we also want to do our part to achieve climate justice, to protect the most vulnerable peoples? Any words of hope or challenge that you may want to leave us with, or you are yourself feeling moved by your experience at this COP in Dubai?
Yes. Well, I think like in this COP also we hear a lot of the climate justice, the word climate justice, and we also see the fossil fuel industry is still very strong at present at COP. And then we again, what we need is also to, like, based on my article, to the like kind of like the forbidding wrong, which is like put the stop, like like we need to stop this fossil fuel like greed, that we need to transition, a just transition to clean and renewable um, energy resources. But like not just renewable energy, but some like the energy that is accessible and affordable, like for all. So I mean, if we just talk about renewable energy, but it's very expensive and people cannot afford it, then we're not talking about that. We want this, like this just transition to, like to happen, and energy for all that is clean, renewable, affordable, and accessible. And also to help those like communities that is like that are like working or engaged on the fossil fuel industry before. How do they transition? Because we don't want to leave anyone behind. So this is, I think, like one of the message that we need to, like to remind like everyone again and again, especially the world leaders, the governments, as well as like like the business, like like entities, that they have the they have the resources, they have the like the means to make this happen. So we need that, because we don't have time, so we need to do it now. And if we talk about climate justice movement, we need to recognize that this climate emergency is intertwined with many other cruel system of oppression, including like colonization, and you mentioned exploitation, and also racism and many others. So we need to keep in mind that at this COP 28 in Dubai, that there will be no justice if we don't recognize the interdependent system that has increased the vulnerabilities uh, among marginalized communities and frontline communities.
Amen. Thank you, Nana, very much for your witness, for being there, for all your work, your inspiring journey, for sharing it with us. And yes, as she was saying, please do read her article on All Creation called Enjoying Good and Forbidding Wrong. There she gives us a lot of all this beautiful and precious knowledge from her Islamic tradition, and much more that we can learn from Nana. Well, Nana, blessings and best wishes for the next few more days that you have a COP. And again, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and for everybody too that is here with us. Thank you for being on this conversation with us.
Thank you, Neddy. Thank you, everyone.